Hi everyone. I wanted to take a minute today to introduce you to a new initiative that we have at IC Devs. Through a grant from the Definity Foundation, we spent the last number of weeks working on a process to look at DAOs, how they work, what's working, what's not working, how we can make them better, and we have some stuff to release today. Now, we've done a number of things, including interviews, research, taking a look at things inside the internet computer ecosystem, outside the internet computer ecosystem. And we've tried to put together something that we call a language project. This language project has to do with DAOs and how they can best allocate the resources they have to build their communities, support their communities, and diversify their communities. The ultimate goal of this grant is to build some real tools that users can develop and use in their DAOs right now. But first, we felt like we had to define the language so that we could discuss what patterns should be pursued, which patterns shouldn't be pursued, what types of forms those patterns emerge into. And I'm going to give you a brief tour of the website and the paper that we're publishing right now to start that conversation. But before I get there, let me say a couple things. First of all, I had a number of people who took a lot of time out to sit with me and do interviews. And in the future, once I have permission, I will give specific thank yous to those people and reference them in this document. Until then, I need to summarize their interviews and get their permissions to include it. Thank you to all those who provided that. You guys know who you are. And beyond that, we just did a lot of research, a lot of looking at existing Web3 grants reports, white papers, DAO research, a lot of posts on DAOs and what works and what doesn't work. So I'm going to flip over real quick and start to show you what we put together. All right, this is DAOs.icdevs.org. And it's a website that looks a lot like our other website. Clearly, our graphics designers haven't been hired yet, but this is a very quick way for us to publish markdown files and to get information to you. So I ask that you would forgive the presentation a bit as we work on some other ways to do that. There's a brief statement of purpose, and then you'll get to our table of contents. So table of contents has a brief introduction, explaining what the project is and where we're going. Then we go through a little bit of our methodology and explain the different resources that we've relied on. The interviews is not filled out yet, but that's where we'll post summaries of our interviews and insights that we gathered from a number of the community members, both inside and outside the internet computer community. Our findings are still underway because the ultimate goal of this project is to build some real tools. That portion won't be complete until we actually finish those tools and figure out how hard they were to build and if they're useful or not. And then we get into the language part. And our languages are based off of the work of a gentleman named Christopher Alexander, who wrote a book called The Pattern Language a long time ago. He was an architect. This book was very influential, and a number of computer scientists took it and ran with the ideas. And so when you hear about computing patterns and things like that, a lot of that work descended from Christopher Alexander. So he puts forward throughout his life's work a number of proposals for how to build generative languages that help you generate form in the world, pattern languages, which are interconnected patterns that you can use when designing or building something to make sure that you are building something that's good and that will last. And then form languages, which describe the actual outputs of those processes. I'll just click on a few of these real quick. The generative language walks through Alexander's philosophies and these ideas of these structure enhancing actions. And we basically take those things and we take the integral of them over across the DAO landscape. And so these sort of core properties that we find in architecture, like levels of scale and strong centers, we find parallels to those in the DAO space. And then there's a sort of a transformational process which we can follow as we talk through these different patterns of how to transform the pattern, how to create the forms, and where we should take this, because this is a living document, not something that's finalized. The next section is our pattern language, where we've identified over 104 different patterns that are used to help DAOs distribute their resources and optimize the resources that they have. If you scroll down here, you'll start to find our list of patterns. So the top level pattern is one called resource optimization. The DAOs are mostly an exercise in organizing resources and making sure they're optimized and using those resources to either develop new code, to attack a purpose in the world, to build a system. And when you click on each of these patterns, you'll find a general structure. There's a picture or a drawing. Our drawings are not great yet. That's another thing we want to work on. Most patterns, other than the first one, are support other patterns. And so you'll see a supported by section, and the pattern will list the other patterns that it supports. It'll talk about a specific context. What's the context of this pattern? What problem is it solving? What are the main forces that are at work in this pattern? Then it proposes the solution. Typically, patterns also either have case studies or real-world examples. We have not been able to go that deep on all these patterns yet, but that's in the plan as we build these things out and sort of get feedback and know that we want to burn those patterns in. We'll go and flesh those out. There's then a therefore, which says therefore, based off of this pattern, do this thing. So here, therefore, adopt and refine resource optimization strategies consistently, involving the entire DAO community to ensure resources are efficiently and effectively deployed, thereby maximizing the impact and sustainability of all initiatives. And then we list what that pattern is supported by. So you can see here we have a drawing, and if I zoom in here, you'll see that there's a resource optimization is supported by effective action, community involvement, impact measurement, resource development, incentive alignment, and risk management. You can then navigate here to any of those other patterns. So we go to risk management. You'll see that it supports risk optimization and has a whole section. Then it further has additional patterns that support it. So it sort of forms this web of support. And in fact, if you go to the bottom of our table of contents here, you'll see the entire pattern for each. There's 6 of these, and each one has a pretty involved tree. And if you open up a new window, if you zoom in on these, here we have institutions that are supported by grants and biz dev agents and seconded resources and educational outreach. So that's the pattern language. If we go back, we can see that after the pattern language, we have our form language. And the form language is broken into 4 different kinds of forms that we find. A set of smart contracts that can actually be written, a set of activities that the DAO can pursue, institutions that the DAO can establish inside of itself, and finally, support software that we can build to support DAOs. So if you click on the form language and scroll through these, you'll begin to see a number of these forms. And these have a lot of room to be expanded, including each one of these could potentially have its own entire design document. At the end, you'll find our work plan. Now, the work plan is still in process, but what we're looking to do is we've identified at least one specific thing that we know we need to go develop. That's going to be ICRC 75, which is a new standard that will help people on the internet computer easily deploy a canister that will let them manage lists of people, of accounts, of values, and even lists of lists. So it's kind of a role-based access control, a set of code and standards that you'll be able to deploy. So SNSs will be able to deploy that and then have a way to ascribe roles and jobs to specific identities. Now, this is an input to a number of the forms in our form language. So once we have that in place, we can then take another step back and say, okay, what are these other forms do we want to go build? And that'll be the end of our grant, is once we ship some software that actually is usable, that an SNS could go deploy as one of their dApps canisters and enable them to do a certain activity much more easily than they could before. So I would love for you guys to go and explore this. Thanks to the Dfinity Foundation for supporting this work. If you'd like to support our work, you can go to the donations at the top, and that will take you over to our main IC Dev site where you can mint ICDV tokens or do a standard donation. Anything helps, and we'll continue to pursue these types of initiatives and build this kind of code that helps expand the community and bring new people into the community and educate people. So thanks for your time today. Please go explore DAOs.icdevs.org and send us your feedback. Finally, I will say that there is a PDF if you want to download the PDF, and you'll see that there's a good bit of content. So you can put this on your Kindle and read it if you need to put yourself to sleep at night, or you want to explore how DAOs work in more detail. Thank you very much.